Well, whatever. I'm glad to know that you had that impact. I don't buy that clerical error story for one instant.
No, we don't either. But we did
But
find
you
out.
fixed it.
Well, we found out that there's a power behind this microphone, and I did happen to mention that we have a huge broadcast area, huge. And when they understood that, they decided that they needed to act post-haste.
It's unfortunate that bureaucracies tend to attract people with no sense of discretion whatsoever. If they have a rule, then they are going to follow that rule, and they don't care where it leads. They have no sense of discretion. I remember seeing a bureaucracy run amok when the Soviet Union was starting to come down.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And they, of course, had the ultimate bureaucracy. And this was in May of 1988. We were in Moscow for the Reagan-Gorbachev summit, and the Soviet Union was starting to open up. Mm-hmm. They didn't really have the hang of opening up. And so we happened to be on a flight from New York to Moscow, which had a whole bunch of Russians aboard. And the people who were checking customs and like they were checking the Russians' luggage, they were ripping the linings out of the luggage with box cutters. I mean, these souls were just getting ravaged, and it must have taken them 3 hours to get through customs. Someone had passed the word, don't mess with the Western reporters. So we're walking through there with our bags. We could have been full of heroin or even worse, American blue jeans.
Right.
They didn't care. I just waved my little press pass, and they said, journalist. I said, journalist. And they let us right through. They had no sense of discretion. You don't have to rip the linings out of the Russians, and it wouldn't just be such a bad idea if you at least had the Americans open up their stinking luggage. Discretion. Bureaucrats do not understand the word discretion. If it says do this, this, and this, then they're going to do this,
to the
this.
T. Yeah.
Well,
To the T, even if it makes no sense whatsoever.
I agree.
I feel some comfort in knowing that those people are hired by TSA.
Well, yeah, I mean, that unfortunately...
Oh, no, we just opened up Pandora's box talking
that's
TSA.
fine, because you're right, Vince, and I'm sorry, but you're right. They have that same bureaucratic disease.
They do. And
Hey, Vinny, let's hold that thought right there. I think that's a good conversation, but we need to take our last break of this hour, and we'll be back in just a minute with our good friend, living legend, Jim Bohannon on USA Prepares.
Class is back in session. Turn up the volume. USAPrepares.com with the original survival economist, Vincent Finelli and Mark Wright.
All this is USA Prepares, and I am Mark Wright. I'm here with the original survival economist, Vincent Finelli. And Vinny, what a class we have today.
I'll tell you what, Mark, we've been grinning since we started. I looked at the clock. I just can't believe how quickly it's going. Jim, can you tell us the story that you told us during the break? I've got tears in my eyes listening. About Tom Landry and when you were on stage at the Broadcasters Convention.
Well, sometimes things happen in radio that aren't what you had planned to have happen.
Sure.
This was a pretty big moment for me. I am broadcasting from the National Association of Broadcasters radio show in Dallas, at like the Lowe's Anatole or some big fancy hotel.
Yeah.
We're in a ballroom, and I'm up on a stage with Tom Landry, the former coach of the Dallas Cowboys, and this audience of 150, 200 people, big names in the radio, big programmers and hosts and stuff. It's a big deal moment for me. I had some dental work done, and my front tooth was an implant, and it had come loose on occasion. I even carried around a little tube of Polygrip in my pocket, fortunately, because I asked a question, and that tooth fell right out of my mouth. I'm sitting there looking like one of the extras from Deliverance.
Oh, my.
And sounding like Sylvester the Cat, but I mumbled this question to Tom that I thought would elicit a long answer. I forget what it was, but I wanted time. I needed time. I didn't need a yup or a nope answer. And he launched into an answer, and I just sort of leaned over, down on the floor, found the tooth, like remember that great scene from John Malkovich in where he was trying to kill the president and he dropped the bullet.
Oh, yeah.
I'm floating around on the floor trying to find my tooth. I get it back up, and I carefully unscrew the cap of Polygrip, and I squirt a little on the tooth, and I just sort of lean on my elbow and pop that tooth back in my mouth, and it worked. And I don't believe anybody ever actually saw me do it. I'm not sure that Tom knew exactly. He may have wondered if something was wrong, but I don't think he knew precisely what I did. and it worked.
What a great story.
It worked.
Now, okay, you just mentioned something that piqued my curiosity.
Yeah.
You talked about this broadcaster meeting you went to. Now, Who are some of the legends that you looked up to early on that motivated you to do this? And then I would be interested in knowing some of the contemporaries of our day who you like and respect and admire.
Well, I certainly looked up to Larry King. He was the guy who really reinvented commercial radio back on the network level. Back when all the network shows had gone to television, all the dramas and comedies, Larry was the first guy to show that, in fact, network radio could work again. And he did. I respected him a great deal. Any number of other folks. Barry Farber, legendary broadcaster from New York City.
Sure.
Actually, he grew up in North Carolina and had a deep Southern drawl, but he was a fixture of New York radio. Barry Gray was another one of those early pioneers. They were people who influenced me a great deal. And today, contemporarily, goodness knows, you can't beat the king. Rush Limbaugh is the champion, the man on the air before you guys, and he still sets the standard by which we are all measured.
Well, you made an interesting point there, because a lot of people, especially modern day radio, say Rush Limbaugh saved the AM dial, but
that's not an overstatement.
It's not an overstatement, but at the same time, Larry King really helped reinstitute the AM dial. Don't you agree with that?
Larry did in the beginning, absolutely. At a time when the whole, I think what Larry helped to really show was that network radio would work again.
Yes.
It would. His time period was such that it probably didn't have the impact that Limbaugh did right in the middle of the day, which is a more listened to period of time than the nighttime hours. But yeah, Larry paved the way. All who followed, the Rush Limbaughs and others, all owe their existence to the fact that Larry King proved you can do radio programs that can originate from one location and be of interest to people in all locations. That's what Larry did.
Yeah, I think that's right. I've always been a fan of his. Yeah. Now, Jimbo, have you ever thought about there might be a day where you just don't get behind the microphone? Have you ever thought about that day maybe coming one day or not?
They can have this microphone when they pry it from my cold, dead hands, Mark.
Mark, how do you feel about that?
Well, I hope not.
No, I mean, how do you feel about the microphone?
This microphone right here in front of me?
That one right in front of you.
What if they said, Mark, you're done?
I would be very unhappy.
Well, that's how I feel.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I just didn't know if you ever come to the conclusion where there was a time and a date that you were going to say, enough's enough.
No.
So you're still enjoying it that much?
I enjoy it immensely. It is rewarding to me financially. It is rewarding in terms of the activities that I undertake. It's rewarding in terms of the people I get to meet and interview. Rewarding in every way. I must confess that a fellow with whom I worked at KWTO in 1966, who just did retire, Charles McCord, Don Imus's sidekick. Charlie's down in Arkansas, I think on Bull Shoals.
He is.
As far as I know, very retired. And I must confess, unless there's a health issue there, and I'm not saying that there is with either him or with Don, but I can't imagine for the life of me why he would do that. I belong to the Milton Berle School regarding retirement. Retire to what? Yeah. If you enjoy what you're doing, why would you ever stop doing it?
And that's how we feel. We love coming to the studio every day. I mean, it's a blast.
Well, and it is, and Jim, I think that you can probably identify with this, is when people ask you questions and you give them the answer and they sincerely appreciate the answer to the question, it makes you feel pretty good. And, a lot of people, I would listen to your show quite often, and I know people call in, they're angry, they're upset about whatever the issues of the day are. How do you cope with that? But how do you keep from getting down, upset, and depressed when all these angry people are calling you looking for answers and solutions?
You have to maintain a sense of distance, which isn't to say that you don't care about the issues that are being discussed, and in fact I do care. But you just have to draw a line internally and simply say to yourself, this is first and foremost, this is not actual policy. We are not raising the debt limit in this studio. We are not waging war on Afghanistan in this studio. We are not doing any of those things. We're not stopping the flow of illegal aliens in this studio. This is a radio program. Mm-hmm. That's all. It may influence a few people, but and hopefully maybe some policymakers. But we aren't the ones making the decision. Don't lose your cool. It's a radio program, so it's not worth high blood pressure. It's not worth a stroke.
Well, how do you deal with that person that I guess maybe you've answered my question, but it seems like to me that people call in and they use you as a sounding board. It's really not even
lightning rod.
A lightning rod. Maybe they're not even really talking at you, as more they're talking through you to everybody else in America,
And
just
they
to
get
keep their own sanity.
They get very, very wrought up and bent out of shape. Sometimes I simply inform them that you're not supposed to freebase the Prozac. that may be helpful for a few.
Talking about that, I said some things about Charlotte County, Virginia, and that was all tongue in cheek. But radio does have a powerful message.
It does. We forget that sometimes. It has a very powerful message. It's sort of like President Eisenhower. When he was in office one time, and they had a putting green built on the south lawn, and he was hitting the ball one time. A squirrel ran across, hit his ball. And Dwight Eisenhower had a pretty salty military mouth, said blinkety blink squirrel, and thought nothing more about it. Next day, he looks out the south window of the White House. There are Secret Service agents running around with nets and traps. And he says, "What's on? Is there a terror attack?" And the guy said, No, Mr. President, we knew you were upset about the squirrel. We're trapping them and releasing them in a nearby park. And it never occurred to Eisenhower that his most idle whim would unleash the Secret Service. Yeah. He didn't realize his influence. Sometimes we in radio don't realize our influence.
Yeah, I think that's right. And
you guys have a bunch of influence.
Well, sometimes, I think about, I've talked about with Vinny and other people as we got into doing this radio program, and, I'm not really interested in the celebrity status part of it, even though you understand that is a part of it, but really the most important aspect of this is always the message and the people and talking with the people and helping the people with the information.
Yeah, we think that the country needs some help, and
we feel that a lot of help now.
And we feel that that's our calling, and this is really a calling for us.
As long as you feel that way about it, this is going to be a successful program.
Yeah, I mean, that really is the reason why we're doing it. I mean, there's no question about it. We spend a lot of time. It's 12 hours a day to do 1 hour of radio.
Well, and just think, he does 3 hours a night. I couldn't imagine.
That's 36 hours.
36
I know, that is amazing.
Well, there are three of me. I've been cloned.
How about that? Well, Jim, thank you so much for joining us today on USA Prepares, and we're looking so much forward to hanging out with you later on tonight at the fairgrounds at our USA.
And that'll be 5:30 to 7. Yeah.
Absolutely. USA Prepares VIP dinner. So all of you lucky people out there that have tickets are going to get an opportunity to have a very nice evening with a very good, wonderful man, and we're just grateful that you came out and joined us today here in the studio, Jimbo.
Well, my pleasure, and I'm honored to be a part of this program, and thank you guys. I appreciate that. We have 5 fan club buttons if anybody wants one.
5 lucky people that come out to the dinner tonight may get an official fan button like I have on my collar right here, Vinny.
And I have too.
Vinny, it's been a great program. You got any closing thoughts?
Above all, honesty and integrity. What happens next is up to you.
Vincent, Mark, thank you. Although classroom activities are completed for today, we are not finished. Study what you have learned and share it with your friends and family. Your homework is to visit usaprepares.com. Remember, class meets daily at 3 p.m. sharp on KWTO 560 AM. No notes from your mama, no excuses. What happens next is up to you.
You're listening to 560 KWTO AM Springfield. And for the latest weather information, log on to our website, News Talk 560.